Batman is one of the most overanalyzed characters in fiction, and honestly, he deserves it. Over 80 years of stories have built a mythology so deep that even hardcore fans miss entire chapters. So today, I'm breaking down the entire story of the Batman, from his very first night on the streets to the arcs that redefined him forever, starting with a version of Bruce Wayne you barely recognize. Year 1. Bruce Wayne is 25 years old when he first puts on the costume, and he is terrible at this. His grand debut as Gotham's Dark Knight is stopping a mugging on the docks in what's basically an improvised Halloween costume. No gadgets, no plan, no theatrics. Just a rich kid with anger issues picking fights he's not equipped to win. Here's where it gets funny. During one of his early encounters, Bruce deliberately lets himself get shot in the shoulder, on purpose. His logic? If criminals see that bullets don't stop him, they'll fear him. That's not strategy. That's a guy using his own body as a prop because he hasn't figured out armor yet. Meanwhile, Jim Gordon is fighting his own war as one of the only honest cops in a department so corrupt it makes the criminals look organized. Two men fumbling toward justice in a city that actively punishes them for trying. But if year 1 is Batman learning to crawl, what comes next forces him to sprint. Because the Joker just arrived, and a serial killer is about to turn Gotham's calendar into a body count. The Man Who Laughs and the Long Halloween, so Batman's barely figured out how to be Batman, and Gotham immediately throws him the worst possible curveball. The Joker shows up, and unlike every criminal Bruce has dealt with so far, this guy doesn't want money. He doesn't want territory. He poisons people and broadcasts it on live television for no reason Batman can reverse engineer. There's no motive to trace, no pattern to predict, just chaos wearing a smile. But that's just the appetizer. The Long Halloween spans exactly 1 calendar year, Halloween to Halloween, and follows a serial killer called Holiday, who's murdering Gotham's mob bosses on specific holidays. One by one, the entire organized crime structure that ran Gotham for decades gets dismantled. And here's the thing, what replaces it is infinitely worse. Mob bosses had rules. They wanted profit. Supervillains want chaos. And Batman has zero framework for fighting that. The real gut punch comes at the end. Harvey Dent, the district attorney Batman genuinely trusted, the guy who was supposed to be Gotham's legitimate savior, becomes Two-Face. A friend becomes a failure Batman carries forever. And the Holiday killer's identity? The story ultimately reveals it was Alberto Falcone, though it also implies Gilda Dent played a role in the earlier murders. Fans have argued about the full truth for decades, and honestly, that's either brilliant noir storytelling or a narrative flaw depending on who you ask. But if you think an unsolved murder mystery is dark, wait until you hear what the Joker does to prove a philosophical point. The Killing Joke. Alan Moore wrote a standalone Batman story in 1988. One graphic novel, not canon, not meant to have lasting consequences for anyone. DC editorial read it and said, "This is canon now," and that single decision permanently changed Barbara Gordon's life forever. Here's what happens. The Joker shows up at Barbara Gordon's apartment and shoots her through the spine. Not because she's Batgirl, not because he has a grudge. He does it purely to prove a philosophical point to her father. The Joker's entire thesis is simple. One bad day is all it takes to break anyone. Jim Gordon, Batman, you, me. Everyone is exactly one terrible moment away from total insanity. And Barbara? She's just evidence in his experiment. That's what makes The Killing Joke so disturbing. The real threat isn't the bullet, it's the idea. The Joker isn't trying to win a fight, he's trying to win an argument. But here's the thing nobody planned for. Barbara's paralysis, the one more never intended to be permanent, led directly to her becoming Oracle, the information backbone of the entire Bat family. Arguably more important than Batgirl ever was. A better character born from an editorial accident. And that famous final panel between Batman and the Joker, still debated decades later. Moore himself has given contradictory answers about what actually happens. Nobody knows. Maybe nobody's supposed to. But if The Killing Joke proved the Joker could destroy someone to make a point, the next story proved he could do something far worse. A death in the family. DC Comics let fans vote on whether Robin should live or die. Not a poll for fun, not a marketing stunt. An actual phone-in vote that would determine whether Jason Todd, the second Robin, survived his next issue. 5,343 people called in to kill him. 5,271 called to save him. A margin of 72 votes. 72 people decided the fate of Batman's partner, and the death they wrote for him was brutal. The Joker beats Jason Todd with a crowbar, not a quick hit. A prolonged, savage beating while Jason is bound and helpless. Then the Joker leaves him and his mother locked in a warehouse rigged with explosives. Batman races to save them. He doesn't make it in time. Jason Todd stays dead for 16 real-world years. That's not a comic book fake-out. That's an entire generation of stories where Batman carries this failure like a scar that won't heal. Every decision he makes after this moment is filtered through one question he can never fully answer. Did he get a child killed by dragging him into a war no teenager should fight? That guilt becomes the foundation of almost everything Batman does going forward. How he trains future Robins, how he handles the Joker, how far he's willing to go, and how far he refuses to. Jason's empty costume in the Batcave isn't a memorial. It's an accusation, but if Jason's death broke Batman's spirit, what comes next nearly breaks his body. Nightfall. Most villains try to outpunch Batman. Bane decided to outthink him, and that's what makes Nightfall one of the most terrifying Batman stories ever told. Here's what Bane does. He doesn't challenge Batman to a fight. He breaks open Arkham Asylum and releases roughly 156 inmates into Gotham simultaneously. Every psychopath, every killer, every maniac Batman has ever locked up, all loose at once. But this isn't chaos for the sake of chaos. This is a calculated move. Bane studied Batman. He knew exactly what would happen. Batman would try to catch every single one of them, alone, and he does. Over the course of several weeks, Batman recaptures about 90% of those escapees by himself. No sleep, no rest, no backup. Just one man grinding himself into dust because his code won't let him stop. By the time Bane finally shows up at Wayne Manor, Batman is already destroyed. The fight in Batman number 497 isn't really a fight. It's an execution. Bane breaks Batman's back over his knee, and honestly, that's just the punctuation mark on a sentence Bane finished writing weeks ago. Bruce is out, paralyzed, done. So Jean-Paul Valley, also known as Azrael, takes over as Batman, and he's everything Bruce isn't. More violent, less restrained, zero moral guardrails. It raises a genuinely uncomfortable question. Is Batman's refusal to kill a strength or a weakness? Bruce eventually recovers and reclaims the mantle, but the damage is permanent, not to his spine, to the myth. Nightfall proved that Batman can be broken, not by someone stronger, but by someone smarter. And if you think losing his body was bad, wait until Gotham loses everything. No Man's Land. Nightfall broke Batman's body. No Man's Land broke his entire city. A 7.6 magnitude earthquake levels Gotham. Buildings collapse. Infrastructure is gone. Thousands are dead or displaced. And the US federal government's response? They don't send aid. They don't send the National Guard. They build a wall around Gotham, declare it a no man's land, and abandon every single civilian still trapped inside. No police. No hospitals, no power grid, no law, just Batman and a city carved up into territories controlled by his own rogues gallery, each one operating as a warlord with their own population, their own rules, and their own borders. Here's where it gets complicated. Batman can't just punch his way through this. There's no Arkham to send anyone back to. There's no GCPD to hand criminals over to. His villains aren't just criminals anymore. They're political actors, territorial leaders, and some of them are actually keeping their people alive, which means Batman has to negotiate with them, treat them as stakeholders. The guy whose entire identity is built on never compromising with criminals is forced into exactly that. The whole arc spans an entire year of in-universe time, tracking how Gotham's social structure collapses and slowly rebuilds itself without any government support. And Batman's victory isn't beating a villain. It's proving to the US government that Gotham deserves to exist, that its people are worth saving. He secures federal investment in rebuilding. It's a completely different kind of win. Less broken spines, more political survival. But if you think negotiating with warlords is strange territory for Batman, wait until his own childhood friend tries to destroy him from the inside. Hush. Thomas Elliot murdered his own parents. Not in a fit of rage, not by accident, not because they were abusive. He did it for the inheritance. He was a child when he cut the brake lines on their car, and the only reason it didn't work perfectly is because Thomas Wayne, Bruce's father, saved his mother's life with emergency surgery. Let that sink in. A kid tried to orphan himself on purpose, and the one person who stopped him was Bruce Wayne's dad. That's the twisted foundation of Hush. Thomas Elliot grew up watching Bruce Wayne become Gotham's most famous orphan, the billionaire heir everyone pitied and admired, and he was furious. Because Elliot engineered the exact same tragedy for himself and got nothing. Bruce lost his parents by chance and became a legend. Elliot lost his by design and became nobody, so he became Hush. He surgically altered his own face beyond recognition, then spent years quietly manipulating somewhere between 14 and 16 of Batman's rogues simultaneously. Joker, Riddler, Poison Ivy, Scarecrow, all of them pulled into an elaborate web of deception and leverage, all pointed directly at Bruce Wayne. But here's what makes Hush genuinely different as a story. Catwoman. Her relationship with Bruce runs through the entire arc, and her allegiances stay deliberately ambiguous. You never fully know if she's compromised. It's one of the rare times Batman's romantic life actually matters to the plot instead of just decorating it. Now, the elephant in the room. The reveal is widely considered anticlimactic. Thomas Elliot wasn't established as a credible threat early enough for the mystery's payoff to land the way it should. The community has debated this for over 20 years, but honestly, that discourse is part of what keeps Hush relevant. And Jim Lee's artwork across all 12 issues is so stunning that most people forgive the ending entirely. Still, a man who killed his own parents to steal Batman's origin story is a genuinely disturbing villain concept. But if you think Hush's obsession with Bruce Wayne's trauma is dark, wait until you meet someone who came back from the dead specifically to punish Batman for not avenging him. Under the Red Hood, a new vigilante shows up in Gotham, and he's doing something Batman never will. He's killing people, crime bosses specifically, systematically, efficiently, using methods that look disturbingly familiar to anyone who's studied Batman's playbook. The Red Hood knows Batman's patrol routes, his blind spots, his operational patterns. He knows everything, because he is everything. The Red Hood is Jason Todd, resurrected approximately 16 years after the Joker beat him to death with a crowbar, brought back through Ra's al Ghul's Lazarus Pit. And the pit doesn't just bring you back, it breaks something inside you. It fills you with rage, instability, violence. Jason came back wrong, but here's the thing. Jason doesn't think he came back wrong. He thinks Batman stayed wrong. That's the real gut punch of this arc. Jason didn't return grateful. He returned furious. Not because he died, because Batman did nothing about it. The Joker killed a child, and Batman's response was to keep operating exactly as before. Same rules, same code, same refusal to cross the one line that would have meant Jason's death actually mattered. Jason forces Batman into the most devastating philosophical argument in his entire history. Your no-killing rule is the reason these monsters keep coming back. You could have ended this. You chose not to, and I paid for that choice with my life. The climax puts Batman in an impossible position. Kill Jason or lose him again. Batman chooses not to kill. Jason falls, but he survives, and nothing is resolved. The argument doesn't end. It just echoes. But if Jason's return shook Batman's moral foundation, what comes next threatens to shatter his entire identity. Batman and Son and Rip. So Batman has dealt with broken backs, dead Robins, and an entire city collapsing around him. Surely nothing else could destabilize him further. Then Talia al Ghul shows up with a 10-year-old boy and says, "Here's your son." Damian Wayne, raised since birth by the League of Assassins, trained to kill before he could read, arrogant, violent, hyper-competent, and absolutely furious at a father he's never met. This kid doesn't just disrupt the Bat family dynamic, he detonates it, because Batman's entire legacy was supposed to be built on choice. He chose his Robins. He chose his allies. Damian is the one thing Batman never chose, a biological heir who was weaponized against everything Bruce stands for before Bruce even knew he existed. And if you think Surprise Assassin Child is chaotic enough, Grant Morrison said, "Hold my beer." Batman, R.I.P. introduces the Black Glove, a secret organization whose entire goal isn't to kill Batman. That would be too simple. They want to psychologically dismantle him, fracture his identity as Bruce Wayne, destroy his relationships, break his mind from the inside out, And here's the thing, the narrative itself starts fracturing alongside Batman's psyche. Events become unreliable, timelines blur. Whether that's brilliant postmodern storytelling or genuinely frustrating depends entirely on how much ambiguity you can tolerate. The research supports both interpretations, honestly, but together, these two arcs create a Batman who is losing control of his own story on two fronts simultaneously. A son he can't control, and an enemy he can't even find. And then things get worse, because Batman dies. Sort of, which means someone else has to wear the cowl. Batman and Robin. Here's something nobody expected to work this well. Bruce Wayne is gone, presumed dead after the events of Final Crisis. And the person who steps into the cape and cowl isn't some temporary replacement or emergency backup. It's Dick Grayson, the original Robin, around 21 years old. And he makes a decision that changes everything. He picks Damian Wayne as his Robin. Think about what that means. Dick Grayson, the lighthearted acrobat who grew up cracking jokes in the middle of fistfights, is now Batman. And his Robin is a 10-year-old assassin raised by the League of Assassins who genuinely considers murder a reasonable first option. The dynamic duo is completely inverted. Batman is the warm one, Robin is the dangerous one, and it works beautifully. Dick doesn't try to be Bruce. That's the entire emotional spine of the series. He knows he's not as strategic, not as psychologically armored, not as naturally terrifying, but here's the thing, he brings something Bruce never could: emotional availability. He talks to Damian like a brother, not a commanding officer. He leads with trust instead of control, and slowly, painfully, Damian starts to change. Not into a softer person, but into someone who develops genuine bonds. Something resembling a conscience starts forming underneath all that arrogance and violence. The bigger implication is what really matters. Batman works without Bruce Wayne. The cowl is a legacy, not a prison. Someone else can wear it and the symbol still means something. Bruce would absolutely hate that idea, but Dick Grayson proves it's true. But if you think Dick's Batman had it rough stepping into Bruce's shadow, wait until Bruce comes back and discovers that Gotham was never really his to begin with. The Court of Owls. Most of Batman's villains are stronger than him, crazier than him, or some combination of both. But the Court of Owls is something entirely different. They're not a threat because of what they can do to Batman. They're a threat because of what they prove about it. The Court of Owls is a secret society that has controlled Gotham's political, economic, and criminal infrastructure for over 150 years. They've been hiding inside the city's own architecture, literally built into the walls, the foundations, the forgotten floors of buildings Batman has walked past thousands of times. They were never hiding from Batman, they just didn't consider him worth noticing. Their assassins are called Talons. Trained from childhood, granted extended lifespans through mystical resurrection methods, essentially turned into weapons that mirror Batman's own concept. Disciplined, relentless, purpose-built for violence. Except they've been doing it for centuries longer than Bruce has been alive, and they capture him. Batman gets imprisoned in an inescapable labyrinth buried in Gotham's forgotten underground, tortured, broken down, forced to claw his way out through sheer survival instinct. No gadgets, no preparation, no plan, just a man trying not to die in the dark. But here's what makes this arc hit differently than anything before it. The court doesn't just want Batman dead, they want him irrelevant, and the devastating implication is that he already was. Batman's entire identity is built on the belief that Gotham is his city, that he knows every corner, every shadow, every secret. The Court of Owls proves that belief was always an illusion. Forces operated beneath his feet for centuries that he never detected, never suspected, never even imagined. That's not a villain beating Batman. That's reality correcting him. But if the court shattered Batman's understanding of his city, the Joker was about to shatter something far more personal. Death of the family and Endgame. Everything Batman has built across decades of war, every alliance, every Robin, every fragile connection to another human being, the Joker wants to burn it all down. And this time, he's proving a point. The Joker returns to Gotham after a long absence, and the first thing anyone notices is his face. He had it surgically removed, cut clean off. Now he's wearing it back over his skull like a leather mask, rotting in real time. It's the most viscerally disturbing thing the Joker Joker has ever done to himself. But the self-mutilation isn't random. It's a statement. Identity doesn't matter. Flesh doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the dynamic between them. His argument is simple and terrifying. Batman was more dangerous alone. Robin, Batgirl, Nightwing, Red Hood, every single person Bruce Wayne has let into his life has made him softer, weaker. The Joker doesn't want to kill Batman. He wants to kill the family. Strip Batman back down to that reckless 25-year-old on the Gotham docks who answered to nobody. He targets every member of the Bat family, captures them, tortures them, forces Batman to watch the people he loves suffer specifically because he loved them. But death of the family is just the opening act. Endgame escalates to total war. The Joker launches a biological and psychological warfare campaign against all of Gotham. Plague threats, mass panic, direct confrontation on a scale that dwarfs anything before. The climax is apocalyptic. Batman and the Joker tear each other apart in the cave systems beneath Gotham, right next to the Dionysium pool that's been keeping the Joker alive. Both of them seemingly die. The man who built a family and a legacy from nothing, and the man who exists solely to prove none of it matters, they destroy each other. Here's the thing. Every arc in Batman's story has been about construction. Building alliances, training Robins, surviving Nightfall, holding Gotham together. Every chapter has been Bruce Wayne taking the worst thing imaginable and turning it into something that lasts. The Joker's final argument is that building itself is the weakness, that caring is the vulnerability, and Batman's answer, after everything, is no, the family stays. The connections that make him vulnerable are the same ones that make him worth something. He keeps going anyway. That's the entire story of the Batman. A man who started with nothing but rage and a costume and chose over and over again to build something bigger than himself. Not because it was safe, because it was right. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.